"You'll do as I say, missy." The words came out flat and pleased, the way a man talks when he has decided the morning belongs to him. Corporal Tyler Novak stood in the center of the pedestrian lane, with one hand flat on the yellow barrier arm and his weapon slung high and tight across his chest. And he said it again, slower, so the woman in front of him would understand. There was no version of this where she won. "You'll do as I say, or you'll stand at that line until you learn how." It was 0640 on the second morning of an elevated force protection posture. 2 days earlier, a threat warning had come down the wire. Specific, credible, a vehicle, and a choke point and a window of about 96 hours. And the whole installation had gone taut with it. Extra barriers, doubled sentries, a reaction element staged behind the tower. Every man on the gate had spent 36 hours being told that the next thing through the wire might be the thing that killed him, and fear that has nowhere to go turns, in a certain kind of Marine, into a hunger for someone to make an example of. The gate breathed cold. Concertina wire ran silver along the top of the barrier line, and the sodium lights were still burning against a sky that had not yet decided to turn blue. 20 feet back sat the guard shack, its window fogged at the corners, a shape moving behind the glass. The lane smelled of diesel and wet concrete, and the burnt coffee heat leaking out of the shack door. A tower clock read 0640 in red. Somewhere behind the barriers, a generator ran a low, steady note under everything. The woman stopped at the painted line, exactly at it. Both feet behind the yellow, toes not crossing by an inch. She wore plain civilian travel clothes, dark, unremarkable, the kind that photograph does nothing. No badge, no lanyard. One flat leather folio held loosely at her right side, the way you carry something you are not worried about losing. She had come up the access road on foot. No vehicle idling behind her, no driver, no staff car with a placard. Just a woman who had parked something a quarter-mile back and walked the last stretch in the cold, which was itself a decision. Because a person who wants to be seen arrives in a car with a flag on the fender, and a person who wants to see arrives on her own 2 feet at the hour when the guard force thinks nobody important is watching. She had chosen the hour. She had chosen the walk. She had chosen the second morning of a threat posture on purpose, because a gate is never more honest than when it is tired and afraid. She did not answer Novak. She looked at his hands. "Badge," Novak said. He snapped his fingers twice, low, a man calling a dog. "Installation credential. Now, you don't have one, you don't take another step onto my gate." "I wasn't issued one," the woman said. 3 words. Level. No heat in them, no plea, nothing a bored corporal could grab and pull. "Then you're nobody," Novak said, and he smiled at that, because it was clean, and it was true, and it settled the matter. "You're a nobody standing at a hard gate on a threat day trying to talk your way onto a Marine Corps installation. You understand how that reads to me?" "I understand exactly how it reads to you." She lifted the folio a few degrees, an offer, not a move, and held it where he could see it. "My in-processing is at the headquarters building. I'm expected. This is my authorization. You're welcome to phone it up." Novak did not look at the folio. He looked at her, and the not looking was the point. Behind her, a small line had begun to stack up. 2 contractors, a lance corporal in camis with a gym bag, a civilian in a fleece. And every one of them was watching now, and Novak could feel them watching. And a man who feels an audience stops making decisions and starts performing them. "I decide who's expected," he said. "Not a piece of paper. Not you." She kept both hands where he could see them. That was the first thing. Her right hand held the folio out from her body. Her left hung open and empty at her side, and her eyes never once went to his face. They stayed on his hands. on the flat one on the barrier, and the one that had snapped its fingers. She watched them the way a person watches weather coming in off the water, without fear, without drama, just tracking the thing that was going to move next. At the vehicle lane, 30 feet over, a younger Marine looked across. Lance Corporal Trevor Baskin, 20 years old, a road guard's reflective belt over his camis, and something in his face already unhappy about the shape of this. In the shack window, the silhouette had gone still, turned toward the pedestrian lane. "I'm going to ask you once more to make a call," the woman said. Her cadence did not change. "The number's inside the cover." "You know what I think?" Novak said. And now he was warming to it, the way a man warms to a thing when he has an audience, and a uniform, and the wind at his back. "I think you're one of those. The kind that reads a pamphlet about your rights and shows up at a military gate, thinking the rules are a suggestion. I've had 3 of you this week. Reporters, activists, the lost. And every one of them thought the little laminated card in their pocket meant something out here." He tapped the barrier once, hard with 2 fingers. "It doesn't. Out here, the card that matters is the one my installation issues, and you don't have it. So you're going to turn around, walk back to whatever you came in, and stop wasting the time of Marines who are standing a real post on a real threat day. And I'm going to tell you once more." Novak stepped off the barrier. He came into her space, close, chest first, the way a man does when he has stopped thinking of the person in front of him as a person. "You'll do as I say, or I will put you on the ground and let the reaction force sort out what you are." He raised his hand. Open palm, back of it toward her, cocked up and out to the side. The flat, casual violence of a man who has decided a backhand will end a conversation. It hung there in the sodium light. She did not lift the folio to block it. She did not step back. She did not raise her own hands. Her chin stayed level, and her eyes went to the raised hand and stayed there. And the line behind her stopped breathing all at once, and the only sound at the gate was the diesel idle of a truck in the far lane and the small electric hum of the lights. Stillness has a weight. Hers filled the lane. Before the hand could fall, she spoke. Not loud. She did not need loud. She set the words down between them like a man laying tools on a bench, and each one was exact. "Corporal, you've skipped 4 rungs." Her voice was flat and even, and it did not shake under the raised hand. "Escalation of force is verbal, then verify, then contact, then control. You went from verbal to a strike. You have no verified threat, no failure to comply with a lawful order I was actually given a chance to comply with, and no authority to lay hands on a subject who has offered her credentials and asked you to verify them. Post orders. Annex Charlie, paragraph 3. You know the paragraph. You recited it to pass your board. The hand did not fall. That was the thing about precision. It did what force never could. A shove invites a shove. A raised voice gives a bully something to push against. But a woman quoting his own post orders back at him, by annex and paragraph, in the cadence of someone who had signed them, took the ground out from under Novak's feet without touching him at all. Because civilians did not talk like that. Lost women trying to sweet-talk a gate did not talk like that. His hand stayed up because his body had committed to it, but his face had begun, very slightly, to come apart. You want to know what an unlawful order looks like, Corporal? She went on, still quiet, still flat, the raised hand hanging over her like a thing she had chosen to ignore. It looks like a lawful one given by a man who has stopped following the sequence he was trained to follow. You have not verified me. You have not detained me under any authority you can name. You have offered me no lawful order I refused. You told me to leave a place I have every right to enter. And when I asked you to make a phone call, you raised your hand. Put that on a statement and read it back to yourself. See how it sounds." She paused, and the pause was worse than anything loud. "You're not protecting this gate right now. You're the thing this gate is supposed to catch." "Who?" he started. Baskin's hand found Novak's forearm. "Corporal." "Don't." The young Marine's voice cracked on the second word, and he said it anyway. "Don't." Just call it up, please." Novak shook him off, but the hand came down an inch, then another, not lowered, surrendered, degree by degree, against his own will. In the shack, the silhouette moved. Staff Sergeant Marcus Odell, 35, Sergeant of the Guard, had run this post for the better part of 9 years, and in 9 years, he had heard every kind of talk a gate produces. The drunk talk, the late-for-work talk, the important person talk, the tearful talk. He had never once heard a civilian in a fleece and travel slacks quote, "Annex Charlie paragraph 3, at a sentry in the flat voice of a person reading it off the inside of her own eyelids. He came off his stool. He turned toward the roster board on the shack wall. The woman had not moved. She set one hard number into the cold air. "I'm due at the headquarters building at 07:15, she said. "It is now 06:42. You have 33 minutes to make one phone call and be right, or to make no call and be wrong in front of 9 witnesses. Pick up the phone, Corporal. Let the Sergeant of the Guard sort it. That's what he's for." Her eyes were still on his hands. Odell's finger ran down the printed roster taped to the shack wall. The morning access flags, the expected arrivals. The one line at the top, marked in yellow highlighter, with a small photograph clipped beside it. His finger stopped on the photograph. He looked at it. He looked up, through the fogged window, at the woman standing in the pedestrian lane behind the yellow line, with a corporal's hand hanging in the air over her. They were the same face. Novak felt the ground move, and did what men like Novak always do when they feel it. He got louder. "You hear this?" He turned half around, playing to the lane, arms wide. "Everybody's late because the lady won't follow simple instructions. Simple. Stand at the line, produce a badge, wait to be cleared. That's it. That's the whole job." He jerked a thumb back at her without looking. "But we got ourselves a VIP this morning, don't we? Real important. Too important for the badge everybody else carries." Nobody in the line laughed. The lance corporal with the gym bag had gone very still. The 2 contractors had found something to look at on their own shoes. An audience will follow a confident man right up until the moment they smell that he is wrong, and then they will leave him standing in it alone. And Novak could not read that turn, because he had never once in 22 years been the man standing in it. He keyed the radio on his shoulder. "Post 1. Post 1. I've got a non-compliant subject at the pedestrian lane. No credentials. Refusing lawful direction. Request the reaction element. Break. Subject is a female. Civilian attire. Uncooperative." He said it like a man closing a trap. He did not understand that he was reading his own charge sheet into a recorded net. 2 Marines jogged up from the guard tower side, rifles slung, boots loud on the concrete, and the lane tightened into a semicircle. 5 Marines, now arced around one still woman who had done nothing but stand behind a painted line and ask a man to make a phone call. The semicircle had the ugly geometry of a thing about to become a story people would tell. "There she is," Novak said to them, jerking his chin at her like a handler presenting a problem animal. "Non-compliant. Won't badge, won't leave, won't shut up. We're holding her for the reaction element. Keep it tight. Keep her boxed. And if she moves toward the barrier, she's going down." He was building it now, brick by brick, the incident report he thought would make him. The alert corporal who caught a probe on a threat day, who held the line while a suspicious female tried to talk her way onto a hard gate. He could already hear the platoon sergeant saying his name. He could already feel the story settling into the shape of a thing that would be true forever, and he was so busy building it that he never once heard how it would actually read when someone with rank pulled the tape. The woman did not back into the barrier. She did not look for the gap. She stood in the center of the closing arc with her folio at her side, and she read them, not with fear, with attention. Her eyes moved once, cleanly, across the group. The name tape on the first Marine, the badge number clipped to the second's belt, the time on the tower clock, Novak's rank, and the last four of the number stitched at his collar. She was not memorizing them to threaten them. She was building the record the way she had built 100 records, because the woman who documents calmly while 5 men close on her is a woman who has been in worse rooms than this and walked out of all of them. You've got nothing to say now? Novak leaned in. No paragraph number? No 0715? 0644, she said. You've spent 2 minutes. Baskin stepped between the arc and the woman, just half a body, sideways, the reflective belt bright against the camis. Corporal, I'll walk her to the shack myself. Staff sergeant's right there. Let's just sit down, Baskin. Novak did not even turn. You want to hold her hand? You can explain to the platoon sergeant why you're soft on a gate on a threat day. Get back on your lane. The boy did not move. It cost him something, and he did not move. A ring of uniforms around one woman who had done nothing. If your jaw is tight right now, if you are looking at that semicircle and feeling the thing rise in your chest that says, somebody put a stop to this, then you already understand what this channel is for. Subscribe to Honor Tales and stay to the end. This one earns it. Novak went from loud to procedural, which is where men like him become dangerous, because procedure gives cruelty a clipboard. He reached out and took the folio from her hand. She let him. She opened her fingers and let the leather slide out of them, and for the first time, her eyes left his hands and went, for 1 second, to the folio, to the wax and foil seal along its edge, and then back. That's a sealed chain of custody item, Corporal, she said. The control number on the seal is logged. You've just taken possession of it in front of 9 witnesses, and you've put your hands on the seal. Whatever happens to the next 10 minutes, your name is on this now. I want you to understand that before you decide what comes next. Novak weighed the folio in his hand, and for 1/2 of 1 second, something crossed his face. The leather was good. The seal was real. The heft of it was the heft of an official thing, and not a prop. And if he had been a different man, he would have stopped right there. A better man reads the small warnings. A better man feels the weight of a sealed government folder in his palm on a threat day, and thinks for just a moment about the cost of being wrong. Novak felt it, and pushed past it, because to stop now was to admit that the last 4 minutes had been a mistake made in front of his whole post, and a certain kind of man will drive a mistake all the way into the ground rather than set it down. Novak turned the folio over, found the seal, and made a show of not caring about it. Probably fake, he announced, to the lane, to the semicircle, to the tower. Sealed folder, no badge, no escort, no vehicle. Shows up on foot on a threat day. You know what we call that? We call that a probe. We call that somebody testing the gate. He was almost happy now. He had built himself a story where he was the hero. Subject is detained. Unverified subject. Holding area. Pending reaction force. He said it into the radio as fact. He was very good at saying things as fact. The woman's watch, when her sleeve rode up a 1/4 inch as the folio left her hand, was worn face inward against the pulse. the small habit of a person who has spent years reading time without letting a watch. Face catch light and give her away. Her pocket sat flat and sterile. Nothing jingled. Nothing bulged. No keys. No phone in her hand. Nothing that could be grabbed or spilled. From the shack door, Odell saw the watch turned inward, and the sterile pockets, and the way she had surrendered a sealed item while naming its control number, and he stopped believing there was any chance he was wrong. "I'll go to your holding area," the woman said. She said it without complaint, hands visible, feet already square. "But you'll radio it truthfully. I offered credentials. I asked you to verify. I quoted your post orders. I gave you the time and the appointment and the building. Say all of it, or say none of it. But don't put a clean version on the net, because the net is recorded, and I will be reading the transcript by 0900. She paused. "Colonel's discretion whether you're still in the Marine Corps when I do." It was the only time she raised the stakes, and she did it flatly, like reading a weather report, and not one man in the semicircle understood yet that she had just told them exactly who she was. In the shack, Odell picked up the desk phone. Then he put it down. Too slow. He reached for the GuardNet microphone instead, because the phone would take 30 seconds to root, and the corporal's hand had already gone up once. Novak's hand closed around her upper arm to steer her toward the holding area. Her feet did not move. And in the shack, Odell keyed the microphone. Odell came out of the shack fast, but not blind. Fast and right. Which is a different thing, and the difference is the whole job. Because the temptation, when your gut screams, is to run out shouting a name you are only 90% sure of. Odell did not do that. In the 2 seconds it took him to cross to the door, he brought the roster with him, the yellow highlighted top line, the clipped photograph, and he brought the control number he had just read off the transcript of the morning's classified access flag. He held the roster up in the gray light of the doorway, and he read the control number on the flag. Against the control number, he could see stamped into the seal of the folio in Novak's hand. They matched. Not a hunch, not a feeling. A match. The system had worked. The inbound commander flag had come down the classified net at 0400. The photograph had printed. The control number had been logged. And every safeguard the installation had built to keep exactly this from happening had functioned perfectly. And a corporal had ignored all of it because a woman on foot had wounded his pride. He had been a young sergeant of the guard once, on a different gate, and he had watched a rushed detention go bad in the other direction. The wrong man cuffed, the right man through the wire, and he had promised himself, after that, he would never again let the tempo of a scene make the call for him. Verify, then act. Always in that order. It had cost him 3 seconds 100 times and saved him from being wrong once. And once was enough. He read the numbers twice, because twice is the discipline, and both times they matched. Odell put 2 fingers up and called across the lane. "Baskin. Here." The boy came. Odell asked him one question, low, fast, eyes still on Novak. Did he run the escalation of force sequence, verbal, verify, contact, control? Did he run it? Baskin's throat worked. "No, Staff Sergeant." He went to a hand. "Twice. Near twice. She didn't do anything. She just stood there and quoted the annex." Something moved across Odell's face and set hard. He walked to the semicircle. He did not push into it. He put his voice into the small space between Novak and the woman. Quiet, meant for one man. "Corporal. Step off her. Now, take your hand off that arm and step back to the barrier and let me sort this." It was a gift, and Odell knew it was a gift, and he gave it anyway. because a good sergeant of the guard gives even a fool one clean chance to save himself. Walk it back while you still can, Novak. I'm telling you as your sergeant of the guard. Let go. Novak was too far in, 22 years old, and an audience, and 2 minutes of committed rage. He could not find the exit even with Odell holding the door open. She's a detained subject, Staff Sergeant. His grip tightened. I called it up. It's on the net. You want to override a detention on a threat day, that's on you. The woman had not moved through any of it. Now she turned her head, one time, and met Odell's eyes for exactly 1 second. There was nothing in the look but recognition. One professional clocking another. The acknowledgement of a man who had done his job correctly under pressure. And then her eyes went back down to Novak's hands, because Novak's hands were still the thing in the lane most likely to move. Odell knew who she was. Novak did not. In about 90 seconds, that gap was going to close, and it was going to close hard, on a corporal with his hand around a colonel's arm. If you want to be standing here when it does, subscribe now, so the next one finds you the morning it goes up. Stay with me. We're almost there. To understand why she stood so still under a raised hand, you have to leave this gate. You have to go back 15 years, to a different checkpoint, on the far side of the world, on a morning that made her into the woman standing in this lane. 2011. A Durton Hesco control point on a supply route. First light. The air already hot enough to shimmer over the road. Captain Renata Salazar, 32 years old, commanded the security element. 12 Marines, 1 lane, 1 job. Stop every vehicle, clear it, pass it, and let nothing through that had not been checked. The threat that week was specific. A vehicle-borne device, a sedan, maybe a small truck, driver willing to die, aimed at exactly this kind of choke point where convoys stacked and men bunched up in the open. At 0620, a white sedan came off the far turn and did not slow. The escalation of force ladder is built for 4 seconds, and that morning it had 4 seconds. Hand signals. Nothing. The sedan held speed. A pen flare arcing across the windshield. Nothing. The sedan held speed. A warning burst into the dirt ahead of the tires. Nothing. The sedan came on, engine screaming. 300 meters, 200, and every rung of the ladder was gone, and the only thing left was the last one, the terrible one, the one they train you for and pray you never touch. She had run that lane for 6 weeks by then, and she had run it hard, and the men had not loved her for it. She made them do the sequence every time, every vehicle, even the empty water trucks they had waved through 100 mornings, even when the heat was 110 and the drivers cursed and the line stacked back half a mile. Verbal, verify, contact, control. Every rung. Every time. There had been a corporal on that lane, too. There is always a corporal who thought she was too rigid, too by the book, a woman playing checkpoint with rules that slowed the real work of moving trucks. He had said as much where he thought she could not hear. She had heard. She had made him do the sequence anyway. Sergeant Cormac Dean, 25 years old, was on the near barrier. He had a wife and a daughter who was learning to walk in a town he wrote letters to every Sunday. He was the kind of Marine who did the boring thing correctly at 0620 in the morning, because the boring thing done correctly is what everyone else's life is standing on. And he had never once complained about the sequence, because he understood in his bones what it was for. He was the one who could see soonest that the ladder had run out. He put himself against the barrier, and he held the near angle so the lane behind him, the fuel truck, the 2 vehicles of Marines stacked and waiting, had the 2 seconds it needed to scatter off the road and into the ditch. He bought those 2 seconds with the only currency a checkpoint ever has. Salazar gave the order that was correct. It was correct in the after action, correct in the board, correct in every review that ever read the timeline. And it was right. And Cormac Dean did not come home, and the fuel truck and 11 Marines did, and she carried both of those facts out of that morning in the same 2 hands, and she never once set either of them down. The corporal who had thought she was too rigid was in the second vehicle. He got his 2 seconds. He rolled into the ditch with the other 10, and the fuel truck cleared the blast radius, and he lived, and he went home. And somewhere he is a grandfather now who has never told anyone that a captain he resented and a sergeant he barely knew are the only reason his grandchildren exist. That is the arithmetic of a checkpoint. Nobody ever thanks the rung that held. They only curse the ones that slow them down, right up until the morning the ladder is all that stands between them and the dark. She learned something on that road that she had enforced every day for 15 years since. Discipline at a checkpoint is not cruelty. The rungs of the ladder are not there to humiliate a driver or menace a pedestrian. They are there so that a raised hand never has to become a coffin, so that the man on the near barrier gets his 2 seconds, so that the difference between a bad morning and a buried Marine comes down to whether everyone did the thing exactly right, in the exact order, under the exact pressure. Every rung skipped is a Cormac Dean waiting to happen, which is why, back at the gate, in the closing arc of 5 Marines, under a corporal's hand, the one person standing perfectly calm was the one person in the lane who had actually paid what a checkpoint costs when it goes wrong. 15 years of that discipline stood in a painted lane at 0645, waiting for a 22-year-old to lower his hand on his own. He would not. So the system would do it for him. Novak crossed the line, not the painted one, the bright one, the one there is no walking back from. Enraged that a detained subject would not be steered, that a woman would simply stand there and cost him his story in front of the whole post, he yanked her arm hard enough to turn her a quarter and cocked his hand back a second time, committed now, all the way, shoulder loaded, elbow high, the backhand fully drawn, in the open, in front of 9 witnesses and a recorded net and a tower camera. Her eyes went to the hand. She did not flinch. Her feet found their base without seeming to move, weight settling, chin level, and everything about her went to that flat readiness that looks, to a man who does not know what he is looking at, like paralysis, and is the exact opposite of it. Baskin lunged. He got there. Half a step, a shoulder, a forearm thrown up into the arc of Novak's swing, and Novak's cocked hand caught him across the shoulder pad and the side of the head instead. A glancing, ugly blow that snapped the young Marine sideways and dropped him to one knee on the concrete. It cost Baskin a ringing skull and a raw scrape along his jaw. He stayed down on the one knee, dazed, but he stayed between them, half a body in the gap, and he did not crawl away. There was the real price. Not a frozen room. A 20-year-old on his knee with his jaw bleeding because he was the only one who moved. This is the part the clean stories leave out, that when a man raises his hand and no one with rank is fast enough, somebody without rank pays for it. Baskin would carry that scrape for a week and the memory of it longer. He had done the right thing, and the right thing had hurt, the way it so often does, and he had done it anyway, and he would do it again, which is the whole difference between a Marine and a uniform with a man inside it. The other 4 Marines in the semicircle did not move. That was its own kind of answer. 5 men had arced in to help Novak box a nobody, and when the nobody was about to be struck, 4 of them found somewhere else to put their eyes, and one 20-year-old put his body in the gap. Salazar saw all of it. She would remember all of it. A colonel who has stood a real checkpoint learns to read a lane the way a doctor reads a chart, and this lane told her everything she needed to know about who to keep near a gate and who to keep far from one. The woman looked up at Novak, and for the first time in the whole cold morning, She smiled. It was small. It did not reach for anything. It was the smile of a person who already knows how the next 10 seconds end and is at peace with all of them. The quietest, most certain expression a human face can make. And on her, it was terrible, because it had no fear in it at all. "Make the right call," she said. 4 words. Level. She had said those same 4 words on a dirt road 15 years before, to a sergeant on a near barrier in the last calm second any of them had. She said them now, the way you hand a man a rope over a drop. Not a warning, an offer. There was still time. His hand was up, but it had not fallen. The sequence had 1 rung left that did not have to be climbed. A man could still, even here, even now, choose to be the Marine who lowered his hand on his own and lived the rest of his life a little quieter and a little better for it. Novak heard it as a threat. His lip curled. It was not a threat. It was the last mercy she had to give him. 1 final, open door. 1 more chance to be a man who lowered his hand. And he was too far gone to walk through it, and his weight was already coming forward into the swing. Off to the side, sharp, rising, Odell's voice. And under it, the small electric crackle of a radio speaker keying open across the whole post. Novak's hand reached the top of its arc. Her smile held, and every speaker on the gate cracked open at once. "Post 1. Stand down. Now." The bassnet does not whisper. It came out of the speaker in the shack, and the speaker on Novak's own hip, and the speaker up in the guard tower, and the speaker over the vehicle lane, all at once, all the same. 3 words, hammered flat and loud across the concrete. "Stand down. Now." Novak's raised hand stopped as if it had hit a pane of glass in the air. For a full second, nobody moved. The word hung there, down, 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 echoing off the barrier and the shack and the wire. And then, into that ringing silence, Staff Sergeant Marcus Odell walked the last 4 steps, came to attention 2 feet from the woman, and said it plainly. Not a shout, not a salute. A statement, in the flat voice of a man reading a fact off a page. Colonel Salazar. He let the name sit. Installation Commander, effective 0800 this morning. Ma'am, I have your control number off the flag. It matches your seal. I've had it since 0400. He turned his head a precise few degrees toward the corporal. Novak, open the folio. Read it. He held it out. Novak's hand, the one that had been cocked to strike a half second earlier, took the folio because it did not know what else to do. His fingers found the seal she had named, the seal he had called fake, and the seal broke under his thumb, and the orders unfolded, and there at the top, in official black type, was a full colonel's name and appointment, and the installation's own letterhead. And there, 3 lines down, on the chain of custody log, written in Novak's own block letters 4 minutes ago when he seized it, was CPL Novak T. He read his own name under her orders. His face began to move. It went through the whole country of it, 1 border at a time, the way a man's face does when the floor of his life drops out from under him. First confusion, a flicker, a not understanding, the eyes going back up to the type to reread it. Then disbelief, a small shake of the head. No, this is not. This cannot. Then recognition. The annex, the paragraph number, the control number, the sterile pockets, the watch worn inward, 0715. All of it arriving at once and assembling into a single unbearable fact. And then, last, horror, pure and total. The color leaving his face from the top down, the folio shaking in his hand, his eyes coming up off the page to the woman standing behind the yellow line, whom he had crowded, mocked, seized, and cocked his fist at. Around him, the semicircle stepped back. Not from her. From him. The 5 Marines who had arced in to help a corporal detain a nobody peeled away from Novak one careful step at a time, the way men step back from a thing that is about to fall, and left him standing alone in the center of the lane with an opened folder in a shaking hand. He lowered his hand the last inch himself. Slowly, all the way down to his side. 15 seconds, too late for it to mean anything at all. The tower speaker crackled again, the reaction element he had summoned, the men he had called to help him detain a probe, reporting that they were staged and ready at the barrier. Nobody answered them. They stood in their gear behind the tower, waiting for an order that would never come, and slowly, one by one, they understood from the silence that the emergency at Post 1 hadn't been the woman. It had been the corporal. And a cold thing went through every Marine on that gate who had spent the last 4 minutes on the wrong side of the line. The specific cold of realizing you have been part of something you will have to explain later, under oath, to a person who was standing right there. Odell stood at attention through all of it, and he did not gloat, because a professional does not gloat when a scene resolves the way it was always going to. He simply held his position and let the machine of consequence turn. He had done his job. The system had done its job. Only one man on the gate had failed, and he was standing in the center of the lane with an opened folder in a shaking hand, learning the weight of it. Colonel Renata Salazar did not raise her voice. She reached out and took the folio back from him, and she checked the seal. A glance, a habit, chain of custody even now, and she turned it face down against her folio and looked at Odell. "Noted, Staff Sergeant." Her voice was exactly as level as it had been at 0640. "Corporal Novak is relieved from post. See to Lance Corporal Baskin's head. He took a strike doing his job. A beat. Log the time. No salute rippled down the lane. No formation snapped to attention. No call sign cracked across the net. The reveal was already complete, and it had taken only a radio and a broken seal and a corporal reading his own name, and somehow the quiet of it was worse for Novak than any wall of saluting men could ever have been. Colonel Edward Fenwick, 55 years old, the outgoing installation commander, arrived 4 minutes later on foot from the headquarters side, with his aide a half step behind, having heard the whole thing come apart over the same net that had snapped Novak's hand out of the air. He took in the tableau in one sweep, the relieved Corporal White and swaying in the center of the lane, the young Marine on a knee with a bleeding jaw, the sergeant of the guard at attention, and the woman he had come out to walk onto her own installation, standing calm behind a painted yellow line. Fenwick's jaw set. He was a hard man at the end of a hard tour, and he knew exactly what he was looking at. "Sergeant of the guard," his voice cut. "I want that corporal in the brig, now. Assault, dereliction, failure to obey, march him. We'll do the paperwork after." "Ed." One word. Quiet. It stopped a full colonel mid-order because of who said it and how. Salazar stepped over the yellow line, the first time all morning she had crossed it, and stood level with Fenwick, and she shook her head once, small. Not the brig. And here is the turn the genre never trains you to expect, because you have watched 100 of these, and you know the shape, the cuffs, the court-martial, the investigation, the boy dragged off in front of the post. If that is the ending you are bracing for, watch what she does instead. This is the part worth staying for. Subscribe to Honor Tales, and let me show you what actual command looks like. "Look at him," Salazar said, low to Fenwick, so the whole lane could still hear, because she meant them all to. 22 years old, 2 years in. He didn't sell a secret, and he didn't hurt a civilian. He came within a half-second of it, and a lance corporal with more sense than rank got in the way and took the hit for him. That's real, and it will be answered. But I don't fix a broken checkpoint by burying a boy in a cell and calling the gate repaired. I fix it by making him, and every Marine in this lane, never able to skip a single rung of that ladder again for the rest of their lives. She turned to Odell. Corporal Novak is relieved from post, effective now, and referred for remedial escalation of force and military-bearing training. Not a check-in-the-box class, the full pipeline. And I will personally inspect the standard he comes back at. I'll run the practical evaluation myself. He does not stand another gate on this installation until he can recite that ladder in his sleep and prove he'll hold the bottom rung with his hands at his sides under pressure. Her eyes went to Novak, and for the first time there was something in them that was not quite mercy, and not quite warning, but the hard middle of the two. You will learn why I never raised mine. That's the sentence, Corporal. Learn it. You wanted to make an example this morning, she added, and her voice dropped, meant now for him alone, though the whole lane leaned to catch it. You'll be one, just not the one you pictured. Every Marine who stands this gate for the next 20 years is going to hear about the corporal who skipped the ladder and raised his hand to the wrong woman on a threat day. And the lesson they'll take isn't going to be about me. It's going to be about the rung you skipped. If I put you in a cell, you become a story about bad luck. Kept on your feet, made to learn it, made to teach it. You become a story about the sequence. That's more useful to me than your punishment. So you'll live, and you'll learn, and you'll be glad, one day, that a lance corporal had the nerve you didn't. Novak's mouth opened. Nothing came out. The folder hung in his hand like a stone. Then Salazar crossed to Baskin, who had gotten to his feet, one hand pressed to the raw place on his jaw, and she looked at the 20-year-old the way you look at someone who did the thing everyone else failed to do. You caught that arm, she said. You put your body in a gap for a woman you thought was a nobody, against your own corporal on a threat day. You said don't. One Marine on this gate said don't. She let that land on the whole lane. A gate full of men who watch is worth less than one who steps in. Get that jaw looked at, then find me at the headquarters building. I want your name on my desk, and not for the reason you're braced for. Baskin's eyes came up, wet, and she gave him the smallest nod. For the right one. She looked once more around the semicircle, at the men who had arced in and then stepped back, and she did not shame them. And somehow, that was worse, and better, and exactly right. At 0800, Colonel Renata Salazar stood at her first formation in service uniform, the eagles bright on her collar, where a gate full of Marines had seen only a nameless woman in a fleece 2 hours before. She did not give a speech about herself. She did not mention the morning by name. She made guard force discipline her first order of business. The ladder, the rungs, the bottom rung held with hands at your sides. And she made it not as a punishment for what had happened, but as a promise about what never would again on her watch. Because she knew, better than any Marine standing in those ranks, exactly what a raised hand at a checkpoint could cost. Colonel Fenwick lingered a moment after the ranks were dismissed. He had commanded that installation for 2 years, and he had planned, this morning, to hand it over with a firm handshake and a short walk and a wish of good luck. Instead, he had watched his successor take a gate apart and put it back together stronger in the span of 20 minutes, without cuffs, without a raised voice, without once making it about herself. He had wanted the corporal in a cell because that was the clean answer, the answer that made the paperwork simple and the message loud. She had chosen the harder answer, the one that took her own time and her own hands, and her own reputation as its guarantee. And standing there in the cold, He understood that the installation was in better hands than his. "You could have ended him," Fenwick said quietly, as they walked toward the headquarters building. Nobody would have questioned it. "I've ended men," she said. "Better men than him, for less. It doesn't fix the gate. It just makes the next corporal careful about getting caught instead of careful about getting it right." She looked back once at the checkpoint, at the yellow line, at the barrier where a boy had held the near angle 15 years and half a world away. "I don't need them afraid of me. I need them afraid of the mistake. That's the only fear that keeps anyone alive out here." No memorial wall, no coded greeting whispered into a phone, no named theater on the far side of the world. Just a colonel who had walked up to her own gate as nobody, been raised a hand to, and answered it by making the gate better than she found it. And a corporal who would spend the rest of his enlistment learning why the calmest person in any lane is the one who has already paid the price of getting it wrong. Every soldier carries a story that few ever hear. Listen with your heart. Thank you for staying and watching. Subscribe to Honor Tales for more,